Well, in the interest of time, I'll just quickly introduce the speakers because I think, does everybody know everyone? Sai, I'm going to just grossly oversimplify as the Graphia person on the panel, and then Suzanne as the EOSC and Lumen person on the panel, and Zvonimir as like the poor guy who has to do all this AI stuff that everybody's demanding in a highly complex and environment. And then Michela, who I assume everyone knows, who is really, I think, the strategy and visionary voice on the panel. And like we said, like I have this mild curiosity or actually a strong curiosity, but I don't know that we'll be able to get to it today about that hybrid AI, the integration of the two. But in this panel, this may emerge. I'm just hoping in this. But what I'd love to do is start with just a quick overview of the kind of the top challenges that each of you face, and we'll just go from closest to me to furthest away. Sai, in terms of like building a knowledge graph for Graphia? I was just in a workshop where we were trying to do some ontology alignment. I was like, oh my God, this is hard work. You have the task of doing that at the highest level. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think we learned a lot from the sessions today, especially from Jan and Julian, basically the scope and the breadth of the issues at this space. But and there's a challenge because we're basically starting from scratch, but that's also the opportunity that we can kind of build it in the way that we want, taking lessons that people have learned from all over the place. So I think the biggest challenge is how do you scale out what you build? Because I know we're taking a lot of care to get off on the right foot so that we have the right ontology that can scale. We can test out our AI modules, but again, everything needs to scale. And I think whenever you're trying to cover the breadth of social science and humanities as a whole, as well as integrate very domain-specific data within inside of it, it's just there's a lot of moving pieces that just need to all kind of need to come together. So I think that's pretty much Graphia in a nutshell. But if we get it right, the result should be pretty cool, and that's the exciting part about getting through it.
Suzanne, if you can talk a little similarly about your charter at Lumen, and then maybe how it fits with EOSC as well.
Yeah, so Lumen, so in the Lumen project, what we do is building different discovery platform. And when we say discovery, so that is for different scientific domains. So we have social science and humanities, mathematics, molecular dynamics, and Earth system. And we have already 2 existing platforms in Go Triple for SSH and mathematics. And the main challenge is first to build and update this platform, but also to make sure that all of them are interoperable. So in order to facilitate the cross-disciplinary request between the different platforms. And what we expect at the end is to have all of these parts becoming services of the EOSC Federation.
And Zvonimir, I kind of jokingly refer to you as the poor guy who has to do everything, but seriously, you have this charter like that. You said, I think in our prep conversation, something about everything Gen AI, that like everything now has an element of that in it. And so, but you're also still delivering the services and things that you've always done. Tell me a little bit about the challenges of like doing everything you've always done and then piling Gen AI on top of it. And how do you manage it all?
Obviously, the field is moving so fast that it's hard to keep up sometimes. And being the person who needs to deliver both the news and how to apply different things that have emerged on the market is demanding, both time-wise and mental-wise, in order to keep a sane head, but I would say that in some ways it has actually enabled us to work more and to deliver more, even with those challenges in mind. So I would say that especially our engineering team, and I can count myself in, can deliver more in less time nowadays. Now especially with the agentic coding solutions. So I won't go into graphs. We have also done some POCs there, and we have seen that it also enables more accurate retrieval by using graphs as in like along with the embeddings as well. So yeah, I would say that it's not all black and white. It's a bit of white as well.
Well, I think it's obviously an important part of the whole ecosystem we operate in now. And I think we'll discover in the conversation, like many of the ways that Gen AI helps knowledge graph stuff. But Michela, I'd love to hear from you. Like I have you picked as like the visionary of this whole thing, that like this event probably wouldn't be happening without like some EU funding and a vision and a strategy to advance things. Can you talk a little bit about the overarching mission here and what we hope to have in, what is it, 27 more months?
Yeah. I was thank you for the kind of the visionary label. Actually, it's a liability. Actually, comes with its risks. So if you yeah, I think we've used up all of our juices so far. So as I say, it can be a liability. So usually you start going on about we need to build enabling system for interoperability and for cross-domain collaboration. I started going on about it in 2015. There were a few people who sympathized with this idea and said this is really interesting, but actually a lot of them were just giving me blank looks and saying, what are you talking about? And so the thing is that if you don't start to raise this awareness early enough, the way that the whole public funding system works, it takes a while to build momentum, to secure the directions, the new research directions, the funding for the new research directions. And then if you don't start early enough, basically you'll miss the moment. I mean, Zvonimir needs ready tools to use. He has short deadlines. The researchers need 3 years to develop a whole knowledge graph for the social sciences and humanities. So you need to, if you calculate backwards how long it takes you to get there to actually create something that's really useful for the economy, you need to start raising awareness like 10 years ago, like when I did that. But as I say, at that time, you have an uphill struggle. And I must say that one thing that has transpired, and especially is interesting to look at now, the European Open Science Cloud is something that's well known to everyone. But if you asked most research teams in Europe, is the European Open Science Cloud innovative? They will say no. And the truth is, actually, now when we look back at the at some of the things that the EOSC decided to invest in, ontologies from the beginning were promoted as one of the elements that need to be part of the whole way that we set up interoperability. Now, back in at that time, most policymakers didn't know what an ontology was. So actually, it was very innovative because the people who were in it were really sort of following the state of the art or contributing or basically building the state of the art. And then, of course, they also commissioned a study from us, actually, from Industry Commons Foundation back in 2020 to see how can we expand the European Open Science Cloud to industry, to stakeholders outside and everything else. And we came up also with the ontologies and knowledge graphs as being very important. And that ended up in the European Open Science Cloud strategic research agenda that's then handed over to the European Commission. So back in 2020, this is early days for the European Commission to understand what do they mean by saying ontologies are important, knowledge graphs are important. So gradually this awareness grew. And now, of course, it's well known that both knowledge graphs and ontologies are present in most of the sort of applications, and both the projects are benefiting from this direction, in fact, building towards that.
Which leads me to ask Suzanne, like, so this thing that we all think of as innovative, but like the end users don't see it. They just sort of see it as this benefit that's appeared or something. I don't know exactly where that perception comes from, but it seems like an early win to not be seen as innovative. You know, that like, no, it's just part of the, does that make sense? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course it makes sense. I think we are not there yet. Because there have been a lot of announcement and communication around EOSC, so the European Open Science Cloud. And still, a lot of researchers everywhere in Europe haven't heard about it. So it's not. This is why we are not there yet. But those who have heard about it are quite impatient or don't understand why it takes some time and so much time actually, and they don't see right now the added value because it takes a lot of time to be built. So the strategy that we have started to develop within the EOSC association with the board is to agree that at some point the researcher don't need to know what is EOSC. They just need to continue using the services and the new services that will arrive. But what is EOSC, they don't care. This is something only for policymakers or the people, the builders of EOSC, but that's it.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's customers never care about what you care. That's Conway's Law and IA. But that notion of, well, I guess that the challenges of connecting, the vision that we have and the strategy and the current day-to-day reality. I wonder, where are we at with the knowledge graph building part with Graphia? How does that fit into that? Does that fit that scheme we're just talking about here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, we're still in the design phase of the project, which is kind of coming down to the last few months before we start putting a little bit more fingers to the keyboard. But it goes back way before that. It's basically making sure of why is everybody understands why are we doing what we're doing. There has to be a why. So, and it comes back to the researchers don't care. They want something useful. And I think we need to be in the utility business. So this is basically, we're producing something to support researchers to enhance the research outputs that they're producing. And that needs to be basically our guiding light in everything that we do. So one of the activities, we talk a lot about co-creation and innovation and things like that. And this is why we have a co-design together with the researchers during the project, not basically just building something in a closed door and then say, surprise, this is what we've built, accept it. And it may or may not be exactly what they were looking for. So it's including your end user in the design process so that what you end up producing is useful and then being used. So I think that's one of the kind of key components to make sure that you're delivering on the right thing, the expectations that they may have.
Zvonimir, I'm really curious now from your perspective, like, it seems like these two projects are happening with more measured and strategy, like the longer timeline and stuff, whereas you're tasked every day, you got to deliver something about this. And also, and maybe I'd love to have each of you speak to this, but I want to hear from Zvonimir first, but the everybody's talked about stakeholders and the important people that it's not just us making decisions. You're talking to users and funders and everybody else. I'd love it, maybe starting with Zvonimir, to talk about the collaborators and maybe not collaborators, stakeholders, the folks you're dealing with. And in your case, I want to start with you because it seems like the demand to deliver Gen AI is like, that's like the top of everybody's list these days.
Yeah, my stakeholders are both internal and external. So we have I have like 3,600 people who rely on me to maybe sometimes even to enable people to think about the newest technology, but both also to enable the infrastructure behind it. So for example, when one of the big vendors like OpenAI or Anthropic dropped a new model like they did this week, so I had a hectic opening of the week. They expect from me, to provide them with the deployments, with ready to use tutorials and everything. So it's quite of a hectic, I would say, thing. So these are the internal stakeholders, more technical ones, and for the less technical ones, I have also expectations to also to shine a light on what's possible, because people are usually presented with a blank slate and with just Gen AI being on top, and then not knowing what they can do with this in order to make their own workday easier, or maybe to do some productivity boosts and everything. So this is the problem, and I mean, especially this is the time of the year when the key performance indicators are very important for for most of our departments. So this is also a huge push to deliver something. You know, like everybody wants to check this box. Okay, we did something with Gen AI, and sometimes it's struggle to present the value behind it. So it's not just a feature on top. You know, sometimes it's not something that's hugely valuable. But for external customers, for my external stakeholders, this is like the top priority is to present them with a like clear value of what they're getting. So, is this a performance boost? Is this a productivity boost? Are they saving money? Are they saving time? So, this is maybe a more clear situation, but also more demanding situation because these stakeholders are not my buddies whom I can like drink coffee with. They demand this to be up and running 24/7. So yeah, I would say there are two sides of the coin, but still, it's a coin.
I've got to say, I don't envy that task about people expecting, well, yeah, you can have a tutorial for me tomorrow, right? After they drop the model, and then the external stakeholders as well. Suzanne, maybe you can talk a little bit about the collaborators and the cross-disciplinary, all the stuff that's going on with your various stakeholders you work with.
Yeah. So what is interesting with Lumen is that we didn't start from scratch like in GRAPHIA, because actually we received, and I'm not really used by them of that, because we received a special demand from the other domain, the scientific domain, who came to say, okay, we really like the Go Triple platform, and we want to have ours for our domain. So it was quite interesting because the what we want to build has been already requested by the community. So they have already quite strong expectation on that. However, I would like maybe to mention that in any case, when we develop this type of services, we have to face a kind of paradox because we want to make sure that it will be used and that it will be really designed for the users, whatever they are, researchers, journalists, and so on. So, okay, but we want to make sure it will be used. But we also know that at the end, not everyone will be happy with the final product. So that means that we have to keep a very hard balance, at least for me, it's quite hard, between co-design, onboarding the community, asking them to contribute and to express their needs, and at some point being able to say, okay, now we have to stop, now we have to take some decision, even if we don't get enough information, because we have to move on. And this is really the type of balance that, at least in Lumen, but I'm pretty sure it's the case in elsewhere, we have to manage. And because at the end, we know that some people will always disagree and say that what you develop is not good enough. So that's fine.
Sai, can you speak to the collaboration? And I'm really curious how your experience might compare and contrast with Suzanne.
Actually, yeah, interesting enough, you didn't start from scratch, but we have the exact same problem. Talking with, with Jan, this very discussion around you have to, especially with something like a knowledge graph, you really have to kind of start with something very specific and then build on that. So therefore, you're kind of already starting from a limited scope. So of course, we have, specific partners that are going to be working with us that will help us to extend, but there's a big difference between extending and scaling. So that means if you're not starting from everybody at the beginning, it means you have to start with a selected group. And that means somebody will be included in the early bits and others will have to be extended. And you just have to live with the fact that you do have to make some decisions about what are the competent questions you're going to start with, and then we will extend them out. So, and even just within the own ontology game, you're not going to make everybody happy, even with the selections that you make on, the terminologies that you use. And I guess that just comes with the job, that you're just not going to make everybody happy. But really, in what aspect of life is that ever true? So it's just one of those things you have to accept and move on. So yeah, even though the projects are kind of slightly different in terms of the starting points, the journey along the way is going to be quite similar. Yeah.
I was just at a presentation last night where the guy was going over the differences what he saw as brownfield versus greenfield. And you're kind of brownfield in the sense that there was existing stuff, more greenfield with the knowledge graph. Michela, what about at the highest level? The juggling the funders, I assume there's like messaging around this. There must be so much at the level that you're at to get people on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, you have to start early, and then you get panned, and you get criticized, and you get shoved, and all kinds of things, and basically, it's worth having that sort of persistence. I mean, very much what's happening here, and also the wonderful thing that we can unite the two consortia to work together, is the fact that we are really all on the same page in terms of wanting to establish cross-domain collaboration. And that was one of the things where that people were so siloed 10 years ago. They were so used to working in their own domain, and lots of them still are. And yet it has been proven that some of the best breakthroughs, certainly in applications, like in software and stuff, are combinations of things that come from perhaps different sources or different domains or different data sets or whatever else. I mean, so lots of that has been proven and demonstrated. Now, we are still not there in terms of full-on interoperability. In fact, we have a long way to go, but uniting these two projects together, it's one of the ways we can demonstrate how interoperability can work, and we can have all of these different inputs from people who have trainings, and they're coming at it from very different angles as well. And so in that sense, this space of collaboration and experimentation that we have here is incredibly open, and usually it yields some insights, some new insights. So this is why we're thrilled that everybody's here, and that everybody can kind of contribute to it and expose to it. But at higher level, then you need to we've introduced something called evidence-based policy. So basically experiments that are conducted by groups like these, where we say, let us show you what came out of that, not just let's discuss what's possible, but let us show you. And then it is much easier for policymakers to take that on because it's demonstrably true and therefore could enable them to create further mechanisms that support this type of activity further. So this is something that has transpired in the last 10 years in terms of proving that some of these activities are really worth funding more and encouraging more, and hence why these communities, hopefully continue to thrive in the next sort of few years.
I love that notion of evidence-based policy, and I'm going to use that. I've been looking for a pivot point. That's perfect. For one of the top-level things we want to talk about today is this notion of trust, and that's a way to instill trust in those stakeholders. Like, no, we got evidence. That's why we should do this policy. That's a very pragmatic thing. But I think there's kind of trust at two levels, like all this stuff we're just talking about, like in instilling trust and earning the trust of your stakeholders and folks you're working with, but also the end products and the knowledge graphs, the services we deliver, the any kind of Gen AI experience. It's a common criticism that a lot of these systems are not currently as trustworthy as they might be. So I'm wondering, just on that, if anybody has anything they'd like to start with on that high level topic of trust in the current era, especially as it pertains to knowledge graphs, AI, how we might advance research in the social sciences.
Well, I'll actually drop a surprise for everybody once again, because EOSC was actually pioneering once again in this area, in the sense that when they commissioned this expansion of EOSC study, the thing that we got from industry actually was the request, not just for FAIR data. So FAIR data, as you well know, is findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, which is how do you join the technology together. So it's actually a technological junction you're referring to. You're talking about FAIR people, right? They actually requested, especially in the context of things like self-driving vehicles and stuff, where they need a huge amount of data sets. So they really want federated structures to give them the data. They wanted a certification that was what we called JUST, which is data practice that's judicious, unbiased, safe, and transparent. The idea being that you want to know the provenance, you want to know the bias. Every single data set is biased. So you want to know what this bias is because it can be useful if it's the correct kind of bias for your use case. But if you actually don't know, if you have a black box, you don't know what the data contains or where it's been sourced from. Let's say, you know, you're analyzing something that pertains to teenagers, but you've got a data set that's been created only with 40-year-olds. I'm just being very simplistic for the sake of argument. But basically, you know, you are going to invest a lot of effort and you're going to get completely the wrong results. And when it comes to self-driving vehicles, you can imagine that this actually starts to translate into huge risk and huge outgoings that are then failing. You know, so basically they wanted EOSC to then be or rather they said, you know, EOSC could be one of those institutions, or rather one of those associations that can service industry by certifying data sets or verifying, or we currently have verification. So the verification authority.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from Suzanne at this point about that connection between, it seems like the notion of openness, that's a trust enabler, but then the practical implementation, like to what Michela was just saying about delivering things that make, you know, that enable things like safe self-driving cars or things like that. I don't know if that's a good example, but if you could speak to that notion of
Yeah, I have another practical example for that. I think what we have experienced since a couple of years with this move to transparency in order to build trust is this very similar to what we have seen since a bit more years in the list of ingredients when you buy food, you know? Because now you can see when you buy food, you can see what are the ingredients, what are the ones that are essential to what you will eat, and what are the ones that are additional or vitamins or things that are just there to make sure that the ingredient will be eatable even after a few days and things like that. And for me, it's quite similar. It's just showing how things are done, actually. So being transparent about the process or the composition and it's very similar to what we have with food. And now we have been asked to do that with the services, the technical services that we provide to the scientific community in order to facilitate the trust building. So it's a kind of trust in process and trust, and here you can laugh because I'm saying trust in process. I know, yeah. Because we have a kind of discussion between the use of process, but so trust in process and trust in the composition of the different elements that are provided to the community.
Oh, no, that's Zvonimir, I'd love to hear from you maybe about that trust, like when you were talking about food ingredients, that's a classic, a consumer example. But I know like in the software world, there's like the bill of materials and these insanely complex tech stacks with, you know, that rely on a lot of dependencies. How do you get trust in these giant systems that you're building?
Yeah, I would say that sometimes it's for the adoption of the technology today, the problem is not just the trust, but also the cultural shift. So we had a huge problem in the last 2 years to convince people that these solutions are actually beneficial to them. I mean, it was obvious, you know, those are mainly open source projects that we are using, but you know, it's hard to convince people to change their usual day-to-day behavior. So even though we could display, you know, what were the citations for some of the resources that these systems produced, even though they kind of were reluctant to use them. So sometimes even when you have like a very good, let's say, system or very good data source, it's sometimes hard to convince. And the bigger problem is actually when things go south. So when things don't work as advertised. So that's the case when you lose complete trust that those people have hardly, you know, like acquired along the ways. So we have seen that in our cases, in our applications that are nowadays like GenAI powered, that when we get like around 10% inaccurate responses, usually people fail to convert and fail to use those systems. So I'm mainly talking about conversational systems because we are like betting highly on those. So these like chatbots, different, you know, like these magic buttons that do all kinds of stuff. So this is mainly what I have seen.
Yeah. That's interesting, that notion of adoption of any system. Like, you can do all the and actually, I'd love to hear from Sai at this point about this, because like you were mentioning earlier, the importance of co-creation and working closely with the end users, but there's still that like making it all come together.
Yeah, I think this is probably where there's a big difference within the commercial market and with inside of research, where I think we really need to pay attention and take due care about so, with the Opera's hat on, we've pulled our community just to try to take the pulse of how are they using it, if they are using AI, how do they feel about AI. So while at the same time we have development projects that are implementing AI, so we're kind of doing both at the same time. So analogies that have been used, it's like driving a bus down the highway while trying to change the wheels. And it kind of feels like that sometimes. But I think the approach that I think most of, at least the people that we've been working on, is it's not a sprint. To take our time and to do it right, because the trust and the transparency in what we're doing with AI is extremely important. So some of my colleagues will talk a little bit more about this in detail tomorrow, so I'm not going to spoil it. But I mean, when we're introducing something like a chat bot into, Go Triple, it's basically being transparent in terms of where is this data coming from? What is the source of these publications? And then making sure that we're working with the researchers just to make sure, are we even accurate in our small scale? So it's not like we took the 20 million documents that are inside of Go Triple and we threw the whole chatbot at the 20 million documents. We start with a small subset to basically be able to test, train, and improve, and then we can add the documents at time, instead of just rushing to implement something that you might actually end up shooting yourselves in the foot. I mean, even Matteo and I had talked about during like the proposal writing of GRAPHIA, in terms of, the training of the data sets and how transparent should we be? And the answer was basically, well, we should be transparent. We should let them know that this is the approach that we're taking. It may or may not be the right one. We can change course, or we can adapt and we can improve. But basically, again, not doing stuff in the back box. Just be transparent about what you're doing along the process. Because if not, once you lose trust, you're out of the game. So
Hey, you and Suzanne both mentioned transparency as an element, and Zvonimir, you were talking about the importance of. I was inferring like integrity in your behavior, that like this got to do. You kind of deliver on what you say, but I'm wondering, because I introduced this with the higher level notion of trust. What else am I missing? Are there any other crucial elements as you build trust with your teams and your stakeholders? Have I missed it? I see Michela.
Something that I like to consider, and that is, in order to do interoperability and work across domains, and we want to really enable these searches that where you as a researcher from one domain can also go and send queries to others and connect to others and expand your areas of interest and research. There is a very important element to remember, that expertise within individual domains is also incredibly important, and we need to cultivate that. So basically the idea, when you do go into this kind of cross-domain collaboration space, is not to cancel each other out. It's quite the opposite. It's to encourage every single, not just domain expert, but within a domain, their uniqueness and their unique approach to the subject matter, because that's what builds their research persona. They identify not only with a particular stance and view with respect to their domain, but also they construct the language within their domain that expresses a notion or an attitude or a concept in a particular way, and that's of great value. So there is a balancing act between the let's say standardization across domains and the ways that we bridge to each other, and the cultivating and encouraging and enabling the uniqueness of each individual research.
Yeah, that seems almost like analogous to the silo spanning kind of thing, like acknowledging the expertise and the uniqueness in each one, but doing things in a way that elevates the whole. That's like management at its best. I want to observe, we're getting close. We've just got like 7 or 8 minutes left. And I want to make sure that I want to give each of you a chance. If there's anything last or anything that we're hoping we talk about that we haven't talked about yet, I want to make sure that each of you gets your last word in. Zvonimir, bye. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just say that this was all a learning opportunity for me. I haven't known anything about those two projects, and I mean, it's also like a fun fact that I have worked with knowledge graphs before, and I'm like probably the only like person in our engineering team that has done this. So it's really cool to see that we have two big projects that rely on the same technology, and I see especially today, with AI being everywhere, that we need a lot of quality data, because we have seen during the years that like Sai said, like when I mean, when you throw like 20,000 documents into some solution, and I mean, you can't verify the quality of the data, you basically get like garbage in, garbage out. So this is what happens, and this is, I mean, where I see like the biggest value of these two projects. So like, it's just cool to be here. Yeah.
The way everybody's heads were just nodding, I think we need to do a whole other panel at some point on data quality and data hygiene and data practices and things like that. But maybe Suzanne? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. What I can do is, what I would like to say to conclude is that I would link the question of the quality of data, the question of the co-creation and the involvement of the stakeholders, and the question of trust, and also technology. But all of these, for me, can be either linked or even addressed under the umbrella of the governance, because it's also a very, in my view at least, when you have a good and proper governance, this is where you can address and build trust first, but address the quality, and also, of course, work to better engage with the community or the user you want to serve. So that would be maybe my additional and last comment.
Thank you. We talked about it in the prep call. I was trying to figure out a way to get that in, but yeah. Sai.
Final words after all day. I think it's amazing to see, basically, if we want to achieve what we want to achieve, how many different, not only how many different topics need to be addressed, how many different challenges need to be addressed, but it's basically the amount of different people that you need to make this happen. It's not done with any single person. It's not done with any single organization. It's multiple organizations working together to address such a complex issue. And sometimes I find it amazing that we can even make this work. But in the end, it's the collaboration, the co-creation, and all this kind of stuff. It really kind of comes from like you have to have a positive attitude. I mean, you have to have a constructive attitude. And that's the thing that I like to kind of the thing that I'm most happy to see, not just with the creation of the proposal, but actually in the delivery of the project, that we spend so much time at work and to not ruin it, and to just kind of enjoy the ride, enjoy the complexity, enjoy the fact that we all kind of need each other to pull our own weight to make this kind of happen. So, and for me, I just get continuously blown away when I see it on a day-to-day basis. So anyway, this event is kind of another proof of that happening. So it's basically cheers to everybody for being here and doing your part in this crazy, complicated puzzle that we're trying to put together. So, hey.
No, I want to say, I'm always looking for T-shirt slogans at events like this. So enjoy the complexity. That's our T-shirt. But Michela, I wanted to get you.
Talk more. Sorry. I dropped something into the mix yesterday during our passionate discussions, and I must say that discussions have been fantastic in the last 2 days, super intense. We've been here so from very early in the morning, and then they continue over dinner. So last night we finished like at 11:30 at night, and we started again first thing this morning. And I dropped something yesterday into the conversation, which was about effectively fuzzification, which is, we are all looking for precise answers, and I'm sure you are actually on the spot for that, aren't you, in industry. And yet, especially when it comes to expanding your research and actually formulating interesting research questions, it pays to actually broaden the, let's say, the spectrum or the constellation or the Euclidean distance, if you want to be very mathematical, from your center of focus a little bit, so that you can start to identify in that broader spectrum some areas of interest which will make your journey, your research journey, unique. Of course, I thought the technologists in the room, and we have some fantastic companies actually that are part of the consortium who are building software, and I've never seen a European project build so much software in the first 6 months. This is crazy. It's really fantastic to see. And I thought they will jump on me and going, don't go there. Like, this is not going to happen. But actually what was surprising was that everybody's been coming back to it and going, I'm not committing you guys, like Julia and Matteo are going, no, don't say that. But actually people have been coming back and saying, I'm really interested in this. This is really interesting. This is actually something that would be very useful. Even if we just ask that as a as a question or as a investigate the possibility, even if we go one little step towards it, it might actually prove to be a little bit of an interesting kind of direction as a technical solution, which we can afford in European projects that allow for this experimentation. I don't think Zvonimir could possibly go there, with the kind of pressure that is. So this is the wonderful thing about the collaboration between us and industry. We can test that. If something interesting comes out, which usually it does. I mean, this is from my experience. We can go to the policymakers to say, look at the evidence we've produced. This is interesting. We could actually have that as a new research direction. And then if it does work, we can go to industry and go, hey guys, actually, you might want to try this because actually it works. I mean, this is how you get value out, real kind of innovation and value out of these European projects.
I love that image of, because I'm picturing like boundaries, like silos between departments, or the boundaries that people have around themselves. Just fuzzify it, and then you can collaborate more. And yeah, I love this idea. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Really great contributions from all of you. So thanks so much. Cool.